right. I think we're going to get started in a few minutes.
Did you just spray something?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No, I didn't spray anything. I'm just...
I thought you were...
No.
Like before a big date, you were just like, okay,
no,
all right.
like LeBron. I was like LeBron, like... We're waiting on Marcus.
I think are we live?
We are absolutely live, dog.
Oh, there's the word live is...
Okay.
It's up here.
Right. Hey, what is going on? What's happening? What's cracking, people? This is Marcus Kwame, and we are the Black Comic Shack crew. I'm going to not waste any time as we do on our ordinary shows with the shenanigans. But first up, man, we got my man, the undercover Sith Lord, Anthony Otero, Tony Snark in the house.
What up, y'all? Happy to be here.
And and heading the show, our captain today is my partner in crime, brother from another mother, Leonardo Faierman.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Psyched to be here for this panel. At this, is there like a stage diving option in Remo, or is that
maybe
we need more audience members?
Right,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, maybe. We'll try that later.
If everyone can move up to the front row.
I mean, this is the future of conventions, as far as I'm concerned. This is
absolutely the socially distant conference.
Yeah,
we're socially distant, but electronically close.
Feel free to sneeze. Feel free to not wear a mask.
Yeah, absolutely.
In here.
Right.
Wear it outside.
Just here, yes.
Yeah, maskless con. No, it's awesome. Yeah, shout out to Cerise, shout out to Narazu and the Virtuous con staff putting it together, and our host Dominique.
Ushi's in the house.
Yep. Ushi. We're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to why like Black Comic Chat is here to talk about voice actors in color specifically. Right. But I wanted in this panel discussion that we're gonna have about people of color existing, behind. I was gonna say like behind the camera, like in the booth right. For the cartoons that like we've grown up with that still exist today, but particularly like in the 80s and 90s, I wanted to go back way far, way back, 100 years back, because I feel like it's an important detail about how like now and like the past. I want to say 2 years where the discussion has become renewed about. The cultural backgrounds, the ethnic backgrounds, the identification of the people playing characters in cartoons now has become prominent to the discussion, prominent to the art form. A lot of that has to do with obviously Jenny Slate's decision to cease voicing her character on Big Mouth, which has inspired a lot of changes throughout Hollywood cartooning, and that's really awesome and great. I also think that there's something to be said about for lack of a better term and for lack of optimism, a racist specter in voice acting. And I think a lot of that starts off with two white Americans by the names of Freeman Gosden and Charles Correll. People in the audience might know who those names. If it was 80 years ago, most people would probably know those names. But if not, Freeman Gosden and Charles Correll were basically two radio hacks. They performed in touring variety shows that drew on minstrel conventions. Like what minstrel shows are about. In the course of their work, they created two black characters. They were called Sam and Henry. And these two were eventually developed into Amos and Andy, which is a name that probably a lot of people do know. Amos and Andy was basically the most popular program of the 30s and onward. Amos and Andy were seen as like a basis, a linchpin for the potential of radio broadcasting as mass entertainment. So this is like fairly early in radio, but specifically those characters were sort of what kicked things off. Like, oh, we can do this. We can do serialized programming. People will tune in every day or every week for a story, for a sitcom. Amos and Andy was like primarily a sitcom. On the panel, do you guys have any relationship to Amos and Andy? Like, were you ever exposed to it in any way as a kid, or growing up at all?
Hell to the no.
Yeah.
No, I know it exists, and I
Yeah.
know that I vehemently dislike it. You know,
Right.
that's about as far as it goes. I know what it is.
Yeah, I think I studied a little bit about them during my African American studies classes.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, like I don't like my entire relationship to them is, I guess, similar to yours. It's totally tangential. It's like I heard of them, but I never was exposed to it. I don't remember a class where we discussed it and they played it. I just know it. You know, I just have that tangential awareness and understanding. So something to like mention while we go into this whole conversation. Before anybody starts this, because you know the instantaneous reaction is, yo, it was back in the day, you know, like developing things, and you know, racism was racism, and we were all right. I want to like make something extremely clear about Amos and Andy in the 1930s. Minstrel shows were seen as embarrassing by the Civil War. Okay, it's not that in the 30s it was like minstrels was just on and popping and this was just a product of it. Minstrel shows were dead. They were done. No one was doing them. They were like totally faded out into obscurity. Like where they lived was in places like the South, in places not like the South, like upstate New York, small ass towns. I want to like make sure that's clear, because whenever you talk about this old stuff, people are like, well, it's different now, and you know, now we're not racist, but back then we were. So it's like, no, even then, people were like, yeah, this is, you know, like a bit much. So at some point, I'm jumping a little bit here, but at some point, Gosden and Coral made a movie. They made an Amos and Andy movie. It was called Check and Double Check. You'd be happy to know it was a complete bomb. But they played Amos and Andy in the movie in totally appalling blackface. Now, at the time of the movie, this is the early 50s, the radio show had been around. It was cooking. Everybody loved it. And although like people were fans of like their racist portrayals on the radio, and the fact that Duke Ellington was in the movie Duke was getting a check. I'm not mad at him.
Right,
like whatever, you know, the orchestra was in there doing music. Like,
and that's the theme. They're getting a check.
Right.
They're getting a check. There you go. Exactly.
You will hear that phrase.
You're gonna hear that a lot.
Indeed. So okay, I'm sorry. So the film, this is 1930. The film comes out. So the radio show has already been around for a while. They're trying this and like this, you know, and they're trying like the Hollywood treatment. But a big reason why the movie failed was that the audiences who loved the radio show didn't know that the characters were two white guys. So the people who bought a ticket to go see the movie thought that they were going to finally see what Amos and Andy looked like.
Just a quick note. The fact that people in the audience didn't know what they looked like after hearing those voices shows that the audience did not contain black people, is all I'm saying. Okay, that's all. Carry on.
No. I mean, I think that's absolutely key. This is. I don't want to make it sound like black folk came out to go see this.
Oh
movie
no, I know you're not saying that.
That was not what happened. It was like white people came out to see black people in this movie.
Because
this radio show.
I would have recognized that those were not black people.
Yeah, I want to say most African Americans at the time were not perplexed at that detail.
Right.
But these people who did come to go see the movie were shocked to see them in blackface. I note here that maybe this has to do with the fact that Google had yet to arrive in the Midwest, where Amos and Andy was really big, so people couldn't look these people.
Yo, they got the Google late pass. Oh my goodness.
So consider this: they tried this movie, it bombed, people were confused, they went back to radio. All right. We had a latecomer. We're talking about the movie Check and Double Check, which was a very early example of Amos and Andy on the screen, with Amos and Andy's creators in blackface in a film. So, again, Gosden and Coral got their start, and their imagination was captured by a concept that had become embarrassing 50 years prior to them doing the show. There's almost no minstrel shows going on in the country at the time. Let's not gloss over that. They were just like, they gripped onto racism. Like they just held onto it for dear life and like their creative ventures. There's an article I read by a woman named Susan Hurley Glowa. This is from, she lived in upstate New York. She quoted here in 2004 that long after most Americans had found blackface minstrelsy demeaning, performances continued in isolated rural areas with, these are her words, with no apparent racist intent. In one declining community in New York's North Country, we're talking about a place here whose residents had virtually no contact with African Americans and therefore no reason to feel uneasy about the other.
I mean, pick an upstate city in New York.
Any.
You know?
Well, the outskirts of upstate cities in New York.
Yeah, like Western New York. Yeah, like the boonies, like the New York boonies and stuff. Yeah.
Right.
And this person actually, the writer of this article, was talking about her own family, and there's some pretty creepy images that I don't really feel like sharing my screen on of her family and in orchestral minstrel blackface.
No. Okay, hence her light touch with the
exactly
okay.
And she mentions in the article the last time they did that, the last time they performed together in blackface for their town was 1955. So again, although I'm saying like minstrels were already canceled by the time Amos and Andy became a big thing, of course, in small communities in these places, like it still existed. So I don't want to make it sound like there were no minstrel shows in 1930. But still, like there was in you know, urban areas and in like more connected places and in places where people actually knew African Americans, it was like absolutely you know, a no-go. So as any of us who probably have heard of Amos and Andy probably know, it did eventually get to the small screen, right? So at this point, this is like a fledgling medium. This is television's like kind of starting out. Gosden and Coral couldn't get away with their racist portrayals on the screen in 1950. That's the time of the show, basically. They were working on it from the mid-40s, came out in 1950. No one was going to fund them doing blackface on television in 1950.
Oh, poor babies.
Well, that's what I'm. Well, I want to assert something again, which is keeping in line with the characters that I'm like kind of
right. No.
They wanted to play the roles.
Of course they did.
They originally wanted to play the roles.
Of course they did.
Even though they bombed the film 20 years prior, they wanted to play the roles. And when they couldn't, what they wanted to do was find black actors and figure out a way to have them lip sync them doing the voices, right? So they were going to be black.
Yo, that's so layered. It's so layered, man. Like, there's so many.
You're taking their look. I want to take the
right.
All right, that's crazy. All right.
I mean, the writing was obviously hack, and you wanted you wouldn't even let them vocally perform this hack dialogue. It had to be you. All right, whatever.
Okay. Yep. You got it. You got it. Like, so again, like I double assert these things because before anybody like comes up with some shit like it was like a different time, it was a different whatever. Like, stop it. Like these are two men gripping onto racism for dear life because they have nothing else.
Right.
All right.
Right.
So in the end, the show did end up with African-American actors who did a lot of work on it. Specifically, like the three that are always called out are Spencer Williams, Tim Moore, and Alvin Childress. Mm-hmm. Spencer Williams is probably the most prominent of those three, I would say. He was a filmmaker, he was a director. He had a career prior to doing the Amos and Andy show, like a pretty successful, respectable career, considered an African-American pioneering filmmaker. And then he did that show. Mm-hmm. The other two were... what was it? Alvin Childress was probably the one with the least. He ran like a record store or something and like ran for the audition and did really well. Tim Moore was like one of these like classic old school like American dudes who was like a boxer and a performer and a million things, and then he did the show. Yeah. So he was just like a consummate performer. But these were, yes, absolutely, and a pugilist. He made like $150,000 boxing. Like this dude like was like legit. Mm-hmm. So 52 episodes of the show were made.
52
episodes
Holy
of the Amos
cow.
and Andy show were made. From the beginning, the NAACP fought it. Like the second like it came out, the NAACP was already like protesting and already like fighting this. Again, like the I don't know, irony, tougher, stickier part of all this is that the people who are starring on the screen like were talented and gifted performers. Like this is not Gosden and Coral weren't on the screen.
And
like
getting a check. They were getting a check.
They were getting a check.
Which at the time, not a lot of African-American people on TV were getting this type of exposure or the money. Yeah.
Right.
Super rare. So yeah, like the way I put it is that there are people who cashed a difficult check, but we're trying to do good work within a racist rapper. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Which still happens.
Still,
this is relatable. This is recognizable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So again, like the NAACP were successful. The NAACP were beyond successful, by the way. They were so successful that CBS canceled the show and locked all the episodes in a vault to prevent syndication. So like, I mean, this is rare, and TV networks do not do this often. Like TV networks will make the dumbest garbage and then they'll be like, well, we can fill that in at 11 p.m. on like Sunday nights and like fill in airtime. So who cares? Like they'll try to squeeze every last drop out of like even the worst shows that they make. But CBS was actually like, I forget it. Like, no, this goes under the bed, in the closet, whatever.
I like that. I think we should coin vaulted, as a saying.
So you're telling me
anything that needs to be just going. Right.
So I can't get it on like CBS Plus or whatever, or Paramount, whatever that's coming out. That's that's not gonna be on there.
They vaulted that joint. They vaulted it.
Well, so this is what's funny, like, because like I mean, racism is tenacious, as we all know. Even though it was vaulted, there have been bootlegs of it, like pretty much ever since ever since VHS.
Of course,
there have been people who've like bootlegged it and found it. There's like really bad copies of it because like people have made bootlegs of bootlegs of bootlegs and then made DVDs of those. Because someone is still buying them, apparently.
I can imagine who's still buying them. Probably people around January 6th. Whatever.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. There's a lot of Capitol rioter dollars in this county.
They probably like watched it on their phones on the way to Washington to get pumped up,
No. It had like tables in the back by the pool in Washington. Yeah. Like, get your. They were selling that in like the Fantastic Four old bootleg.
I guess the Capitol rioters were the ones who would have been shocked and disappointed that there were black people in it. They would have been like, wait, no, we wanted the blackface. Like, why wasn't there black? It would have been the opposite of like the people who went to go see the film.
Right.
See, I support black business.
Okay, so I'm coming to a conclusion on this whole rant, and specifically what it has to do with voice acting, because it doesn't just have to do with voice acting. The thing I said about how they want to lip sync the actors. 1961 now, so this is over 30 years from the start of their radio show. The TV show had been off the air for like almost 10 years by this point. Mm-hmm. And they're like, how do we continue our racism? Like, how do we do it? Like, we tried everything. Yeah, like they're sitting at writing desk with their head in their hands, like just like, we want to still be racist, but like we're already donezo. Like I know they've got tons of money by this point. I presume that they've kept a good portion of the wealth that they've built on their racist work. But they're like, how do we keep going? And they realized that they could continue their racist antics under the protective guise of a cartoon. So they made Calvin and the Colonel, which basically was, I mean, as to my estimation, and I don't want to do it any favors, a lower key Amos and Andy with anthropomorphic animals. They just couldn't depart from their passionate racist creative expression. And so like, even if you're thinking like, well, maybe it's just that they've done that work so long, so they automatically know, they actually adapted old radio scripts of the show into the cartoon. What? So this was Amos and Andy, but with like foxes and dogs and stuff.
So this wasn't even new material. They just recycled
There was
old
scripts. Some new material, but a lot of it was recycled.
It's almost like they didn't have any real talent.
you know what I'm saying? It's like it's like freaking it's like Gallagher, continuing to smash the watermelon. Like it's like that's all he can do. So I mean, I'm gonna keep doing it. Like they just couldn't stop.
So where was this show shown? Like, was it like Saturday morning cartoons? Like what?
It was TV. It was, I believe, originally aired on Saturdays. It was part of Cartoon Blocks, and it lasted one season of 26 episodes, and it was donezo.
A lot. Wow.
I know. I mean, even that is a lot. It was apparently semi-successful. If you go Googling stuff for Calvin and the Colonel, you'll find like a board game. You'll find some like remnant things where you're like, well, somebody was watching this because they did some marketing and like they made products out of it. Is pretty interesting. I do have a little of Calvin and the Colonel. If you guys want to see it, you can find it cooking around on YouTube. And I'd like to attempt to share. If this doesn't work, that's fine. I don't think anybody's gonna be too lost for not having seen this, but I think it's worth seeing. So I'm gonna try to share my screen on this. Give me 1 second. We're gonna experiment.
Do you know what? As you do that, do you know what network this cartoon was on?
It was on.
Because if it was still on CBS, I have to do a side eye on that.
This was NBC. Shout out Peacock.
Peacock, yeah.
NBC and NBC joint.
Coming to the Peacock.
All right,
we're $4.99 an episode.
Let's see. Share. I'm gonna try to share the video, and let's see what happens.
Oh, this should be interesting.
Can we watch this? Yeah. All right.
They had a Thanks Day episode. Oh.
Yep.
I already hate it.
Mm-hmm.
I already hate it.
You know you're gonna hate it.
I already hate it. And these white actors, they did the voices?
Yes, sir. That's your boys right there. The racists who couldn't stop racisting. The quality is so shit too, but
much as I have heard various and new various rumors that my dear wife and my sweet sister-in-law Sue, that we have been drumsticking and ham hocking to excess at your various home.
1961. 1961.
By inviting all 36 of you to our house 1 year from today for a big turkey and ham dinner on Thanksgiving.
I've heard this voice is familiar.
Well, I'm going to get to that. All right, can we turn this off? How do we turn off the video? I'm tired of the racism. Thank you. Okay. No, Tony, I'm glad you mentioned something about that.
His voice sounds familiar, yeah.
Well, I wanted to, this is kind of like one of the main reasons I'm doing all this. I'm talking about all this, is that if you look at that visually, and I've seen actually like a few episodes of it. Visually, there's not a lot in there that's like a touchstone to any type of like stereotypically or insultingly racist Black experience. The characters, they don't have the tuxedo gloves that like a lot of like those like old racist portrayals have. They're basically just a fox in a coat, maybe with a cigar. And I feel like in passing, like if you were walking by the TV and that was on, you wouldn't be like, oh, racist cartoon. All right, anyway, like let me go about my day. You kind of have to know this context to see it. And why I think that Calvin and the Colonel is pretty significant is that I think it's sneaky. I think it brings that, like we're talking about it now we've entered it in like scene and like can cringe at like specifically that voice. But I think there were plenty of Americans who watched that and didn't even know what it was, who didn't know what Amos and Andy was. They were little kids like watching like a cartoon one day.
Yes.
Yeah.
I hear some of that. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, and Looney Tunes like was rife with racist and stereotypical imagery.
Indeed.
So yeah.
Even Disney.
Oh yeah, definitely Disney.
Yeah, no, that Disney's like big on that. There's a great New Yorker article that kind of like that goes into that a bit more deeply, written by an African American woman, which I will actually link here. Anybody with an interest in any of the stuff I'm talking about, she talks a little bit about Amos and Andy here, but here I'm just sharing that. This is a very, very, very good article that talks a bit about the involvement of racist stereotypical imagery in Disney and such. Maybe Looney Tunes as well, I forget. But anyway, so this whole narrative,
old Looney Tunes. Just
old Looney Tunes,
old school, yeah.
Not new Looney Tunes, yeah.
Not new Looney Tunes, but we're talking like if you look at the original Dumbo, back then with the crows.
You can't talk about this without talking about Dumbo.
You look at all the like the Bugs Bunny stuff back then. Like, I mean, this stuff was rife with it. So what I find interesting, Leo, is that when we're talking about blackface as like in a show where it's like forbidden, but in animation, that's a whole different story.
Get away when people have gotten away with it for longer, which is why like these, like we can call them like pioneers of racism, like use that as their last effort. Like that's it. That was their swan song, was adapting their racist bullshit into a cartoon. And so when we talk about, I'd like to talk a little bit about the show that we do. When we talk about cartoons and serial, we many times like deconstruct like race portrayals, racism, like whether like overt or covert in the shows that we watch. It's something that like we can't like help but like look for and see and try to read. And I think that this show, it's not okay. It wasn't the first cartoon ever. It wasn't anything like this, but I feel like the fact that he even made those 26 episodes that we were shocked that it completed shows that it's a medium where people can get away with that.
Yep.
Where people can get away with DJ in Street Fighter 2, where people can get away with, all this like ridiculous nonsense. And a lot of that has to do with like a still pretty appalling like lack of diversity in the vocal booth. All right, I've been talking like way too much. Marcus, do you want to talk a little bit about how we started Cartoons and Serial? You want to chat that up a little bit?
Yeah, so Cartoons and Serial, I believe it just started out, we were just all talking, it was a discussion, and Leo, you brought up the show Cops. From, when did it air? I want to say like 1989, maybe?
89, yeah, 89.
Like late 80s, yeah. And so, we'll get to it in a minute, because obviously, for all of us, grown, folk, black and brown folks, like there's a complicated relationship with the police, to say the least. But as a kid, there's like it was a goofy show. It was a show about fighting crime in the future time, which is a tagline, and the main cop, the head of this like special unit, which Leo, what does this stand for? What does COP stand for again? Central Organization of Police.
Specialists.
Specialists, yes. So this
the
shows
most unnecessary acronym of all time.
They're not just normal police; they're police specialists.
Right. Yes, and yeah, Harold in the audience shouts out Bulletproof. Bulletproof vest, BP vest was the main cop, which I'm sure we brought up at a certain point. But there's been writing done about how like the idea of like Luke Cage is a bulletproof black man. There's definitely some meaning in that. Even not necessarily that was originally intended, but like there's something in that. And then I think the recurring idea of bulletproof black characters and heroes, it resonates. You know what I mean? Because I think that just with America's history of violence, against black people. It's like, yeah, why wouldn't that be a part of what you dream for, is being bulletproof? Yeah. Anyway, though, Bulletproof vest, BP vest, he's the boss of the show. And as a kid, I swore he was the voice actor was black. But as we found out through Cartoons and Serial, he wasn't. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So Leo brought up Cops, and just wanting to revisit it, and he brought the idea of maybe doing like a watch along show. So I was all for it, because I remember it being a really goofy show that at times had some, cool artwork and animation. And I thought it would be fun to rewatch. So we started doing Cartoons and Serial, the three of us. I want to say like right when quarantine was really starting.
Yeah, it was in March of last year.
Yeah. And so, that was the origin of Cartoons and Serial. And we would do it through our Twitch channel. And, it was just fun because like it wasn't just us, we started having our regulars, many of whom are here today. And so actually many of whom are like have a wealth of knowledge about cartoons, people like Ushi and Namalki. And yeah, like we get into some really, really interesting discussions as we watch cartoons. You know, sometimes clown them, take walks down memory lane. And definitely, as Leo mentioned, there's definitely some deconstruction that happens, you know, because one of us is always Googling to try to figure out if some of these characters of color are actually voiced by people of color. You know, sometimes you could tell they're not, like with DJ on Street Fighter, you know. But yeah, that's in a nutshell, that's what cartoons and serial is, and that's the origin story for it.
Isn't it funny how like I was thinking about this today. Watching cartoons. All right, so I was like, I have a brother, but he was like a lot older than me, so I'm like a semi-only child, and watching cartoons was a solitary experience for me. It was something like as a kid, I just sat there in silence, like watching like a TV show. And one of the fascinating things about what we do every weekend is like how we are all like, we're actually all on the couch. We get to all be on the couch and like talk this shit. And I didn't realize like how much of that like racial deconstruction and such that like I think even I did as a kid. Like I was always like questioning, but I had no way to know. Like I didn't have Google back when like, you know, these shows were on. I had no way to like double check this stuff. Right. And so I just created like sort of headcanons or like, yeah, like with Bulletproof Vest, like he's obviously like a black dude. Like he had to be. And it wasn't because I don't think Bulletproof is performed in any kind of stereotypical cloying way. Like it's a voice, like it's not.
Yeah, I mean, he's as silly as everyone else in that show, but I mean, it's not done as a caricature.
No.
I also think that at some point after George Floyd, I think we had to reevaluate watching cops or any propaganda. So I think at that point, we were really getting into, you know, we were watching Cops, we were watching Rambo. I think we did a little G.I. Joe, you know, and I think after George Floyd, I think we really took a step back and said, you know, we need to check ourselves and really start calling out either propaganda or maybe not showing it. And I think it was been months since we actually saw another episode of Cops again.
Right.
And I think. But it allowed us to expand our number of shows that we've watched. Right. So if we're going to say anything positive about that decision, it was definitely that.
Yeah. And, you know, I just want a few things. I think, you know, you guys mentioned how BP Vest wasn't performed as a stereotype. And I think there's really something to that. I think for me, because just to rewind a little bit, not to get too far off topic, but we mentioned like Dumbo, and I remember specifically as a kid, right? Mm-hmm. I wasn't even offended by the Crows for the specific reason I didn't recognize them when I was a little kid. I didn't recognize them to be black because that didn't sound like the black people that I knew. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I wasn't like, oh man, they're making fun of black people. Mm-hmm. I just was like. Okay, those are some like wacky Crow characters. Now, when I revisited it, so I like forgot about the Crows, and then I remember as an adult, I don't even remember who I was with, but somebody like threw on Dumbo, and I was like, "What?" I was like, "Little John." I was like, "What?" I got on my Little John. You know what I'm saying? Because obviously I had more context. I had more context as an adult for minstrelry and all of that stuff, but as a little kid with no context for the whole minstrel tradition. The Crows I just was like, all right, they're just some weird characters, and Dumbo's getting drunk on that or whatever, you know what I mean? Right. And so I say all that to say, like, it's interesting that I did not recognize those specific racist stereotype characters as a young child, you know what I mean, as black. But BP Vest, because he's just like a dude, and, you know, he performs his voice in like an authoritative like way. But it somehow rang truer, even though the voice actor is not black, which is weird. You know what I mean? But I think, or maybe not that it rang truer, but it was able to pull an okie doke on me. I was able to be convinced. Right. Yeah. That's what I was.
It thwarted questioning and thwarted inquiry. Yeah. It was like, yeah, of course. Yeah. Like, again, he is that. And so why wouldn't he be?
Right.
Yeah. Like,
So I think going back to what Leo was saying about the subtleness of racist images. I think as a kid, we don't recognize it, and that's the subtlety of racism, where we can show you a bunch of images, and then it kind of grows up with you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So now it's something you're never gonna not see.
Yeah.
So it can be nefarious, like what Mark is talking about with the crow, like the crows in Dumbo. When you're young, when you don't have the context or comparison point, or even like maybe not that you lack a questioning spirit, but that you're sort of taking things at face value to some extent. That's the nefarious aspect of these racist portrayals.
Yeah, actually, Jeff, sorry, real quick, Jeff, who was
that's Namalki.
Yeah, Namalki. Mentions feeling the same way about Heckle and Jekyll as a kid, and that's the same thing with me.
And Jekyll.
Yeah, same thing with me. I didn't, So yeah, I just wanted to point that out. There's a lot of good discussion happening in the chat right now.
Agreed.
Yeah, and we have 2 questions, but before then, I do want to speed it along. Let's talk a little bit about the voice actors.
Okay.
And the voice actors that I think that sort of really defined Black voice acting, and I know that we came up with a huge list. I mean, in preparing for this, we came up with not only a list of every cartoon we've seen, which I was just kind of blown away by that. It's a lot. But we also kind of pulled out some folks, and I think we're going to mention, I think 5 folks of note. Now, there's a lot of people. I think it's 5 or 6 folks of note.
Six.
Okay. So one is Cree Summer. Cree Summer has so many works. And I think one of the things that really sort of stand out for her is how she is one of the few folks that played white-facing characters like Penny from Inspector Gadget. But yet she's done other stuff too, in both sort of the black and white binary. Another person of note is James Avery, Uncle Phil. And he did Shredder in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which, we thought was, obviously, if you've grown up with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you know the voice. There is, I believe it's Yona Morris. She played Storm on the X-Men. And she also played Medusa in the Fantastic Four, which is a show I've never seen. I think it had like 1 season. But here we're talking about, again, a Black actor playing a white voice, which is kind of rare, at least in the time of the shows that we've watched. And I just want to say that in Cartoons and Serial, we've watched shows between 1976 and 1999, and that's the area we operate in. So if they're voice actors now, like Phil Lamar, who really sort of span the gamut, but we didn't really focus on him so much.
He's the epitome of ubiquity. He's awesome.
He's
awesome.
Green Lantern. He's awesome.
He's Static Shock.
Static Shock. Yeah. But for the sake of this show, we don't see much of his work because he's later on in sort of the 2000s.
Yeah.
There's Earl Hyman, and Earl Hyman, he's the sort of the dad in the Cosby Show, the grandfather. Earl Hyman did Panthro in the Thundercats, and I love Thundercats. And oddly enough, that's the only thing he's done in terms of
voice
animation and voice acting. But he's so iconic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you knew that when you saw Panthro, he was Black.
Yes.
You just knew it.
Well, no, it's funny, right? Because like a few years ago, there was sort of this like running thing like that like popped up on Twitter here and there about how like Panthro's Black, right? And everyone was like, of course he is. Although,
I think we definitely contributed to it.
No, and we were part of that conversation. But to be honest, I don't remember when that conversation was happening, people being like, oh, also the voice actor was, Cliff
No,
Hudson's
you're right.
dad.
That didn't even come up.
Like, it didn't. For some reason, like it was sort of beside the point.
Well, it was because we just understood Panther. You know what I mean? It was almost like it didn't even matter really because he's Black. Panther was Black.
Right, right.
A note on Yona Morris. Yes, she also did Robotech, and she still continues to do Robotech whenever that comes out. So I always think that that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Hold on. So that's Earl Hyman. I think the next one is Arthur Burghardt, and you have to know the voice for Arthur Burghardt. He played Destro in G.I. Joe. and Iceberg. And, you know, we had a laugh about the fact that he played a character named Iceberg and G.I. Joe. Iceberg is probably the one character that I didn't really know much about. He's a black, how do you even call that skill set?
Like an Arctic explorer.
An Arctic explorer? Like, yeah. And I was saying, like, what black person you know loves the cold? Like, they picked the one guy in Buffalo who loves being in Buffalo. So,
I actually wonder what the percentage of like black workers in Antarctica, like what's Antarctica's like black population? I have no idea. I would expect it's low, but maybe I'm wrong.
Right. And I think the next one is Dennis Ikayama. Am I correct about that? And he played Iceman in the X-Men. So let's bring that up.
Yeah.
The X-Men animated. And we also found this very interesting. He's done a ton of work too. But again, we pulled out the fact that, you know, here's an actor of color who is playing he also played Sunfire in X-Men animated, but he's playing a white.
Yeah, for Iceman, who I think Iceman is sort of like one of the whitest superheroes ever.
He absolutely is.
In a weird way.
Yeah, he kind of is. Yeah.
Like just like critically white, critically white superhero.
So yeah, this is just
critically white.
A sampling of the voice actors. And one of the things that I think really struck me as we do this survey, and I consider it a survey of cartoons and cartoons as serial, is the fact that, you know, there are some outliers, shows that have a majority cast of color versus the rest of the shows. And some of those outliers include Rickety Rocket. Like, we played Rickety Rocket before. It's a show that I think is Hanna-Barbera or was it Ruby Rose?
Ruby Spears.
I said Ruby Rose. Ruby Spears. Yes. So Rickety Rocket, like Bookman from Good Times is in there. Mostly cast of color, which, you know, at that time, it's like virtually unheard of.
Well, it's crazy because that show is 76, I think.
Yeah.
So that means that, like, at that time, that percentage of people of color in the vocal booth was like totally like didn't exist.
Right.
And then it didn't exist for a very long time after that too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Right.
most of the shows that we watch, like you said, like 80s, 90s is our bread and butter. Do not have a cast list.
Right. And I think the most diverse show after that was Kid and Play and Hammerman, which both came out. Well, I think Hammerman's early 90s and Kid and Play is late 80s. So those two, you know, whether you like the show Hammerman or not, we have a definitive no on Hammerman for us. Kid and Play is absolutely awesome.
Yeah, we enjoy it every time we watch it. Yeah.
So if anybody has missed Kid and Play or hasn't gone back to it, like that's a mighty good show. Yeah. I want to. All right, we have a lot.
We definitely have to.
Okay.
Let's go to questions. Okay.
No. Yeah. Should we take questions?
Yeah. But let's also shout out definitely some great suggestions.
Keith David for sure. Okay. Yeah. So this is something that didn't come up. We meant to talk about this a little bit before. Keith David is like an institution on unto himself. Gargoyles in specific is massive, but there is something to be said about voice actors who have primarily like found their way through voice acting. Keith David is one of those that kind of does it all. Like, I mean, he was, you know, a tremendously accomplished actor, like live action actor, as are some of the voice actors that we talk about and see. But the ones that are of more interest to us are the ones that have thrived in the booth. Keith David can kind of like do anything. Yeah. That being said, there was a detail about Gargoyles that I actually didn't know when we were like researching shows. We've never done Gargoyles on Cartoon Serial. Actually, we've done very little Disney because the mouse scares us. They're going to cancel us.
Shut down. Yeah.
But I don't want to at all like denigrate like the importance of Gargoyles itself.
Yeah.
But specifically, the thing about Gargoyles that I found most interesting, which similar to us talking about Rickety Rocket, is like, well, they did this, so why haven't others? Is specifically the character. Where's my? Yeah, I don't want to mess up her name, of course.
Sally Richardson. Are you talking about the character's name or the?
I'm talking about both. I don't want to mess up either thing.
Well, the actress was Sally Richardson.
Wait a minute. No. Hold on a second.
Just letting you know, we got 5 minutes.
Yeah, we are. 5 minutes.
Oh, really? Should we just take?
While you're doing that, let's take.
Yeah. Let's take questions. Does anyone have questions or comments?
Yeah, it's on the Q&A side. So,
Oh, Q&A. Okay.
Yeah, I'll read this out from Harold Pete. Not sure if you're familiar with the Galaxy Rangers, which we've done. Yeah. But I would be interested to hear your take on the character Walter Doc Hartford.
Ooh. We did Galaxy Rangers once, didn't we?
We did do Galaxy Rangers once, and I don't.
Oh, he's not in it. He's not in the first episode.
He's not.
That's why.
No, we watched one episode. You see him like in the corner or something, but he's not really in the episode.
You know what? We will
the Rangers by the end of it.
We'll revisit it, and then I mean, if you want to join us on Cartoons and Cereal, we could.
You know what? Why don't we watch it next week? Why don't we watch
it? I'm down.
Next.
Wait. When does Cartoons and Cereal happen, Tony?
Well, it happens every weekend at 11:30 ish. Saturday and Sunday, and we say ish because things happen. So sometimes it's 11:45, sometimes it's 11:30. But
you know what? I mean, we may have some new viewers, so we are going to do our best to start right at 11:30. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Next question.
The new job.
Next question. Do y'all feel vilifying black or dark colors as a continuation of racist ideology? Is there a language specifically pushed a lot behind the scenes? That's a great question.
Yeah.
Like in the skin tones of cartoon characters? Is that?
That's what it sounds like in terms of colors. I don't know, and I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. But I think the color palettes they're not that diverse. Maybe if you go into stuff like Rickety Rocket, Kid and Play, you might see that.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to answer that question outside.
But Tony, I think there's something to what you're saying, because I've definitely had commentary on the fact that when there's multiple black characters, they're usually colored the same way. That being said, I think we've noticed patterns where even if it's like anthropomorphic or like an alien or whatever, like, you know, there will be a darkening of hues. So it won't maybe be like literal black people. You know what I mean? Like, but we've seen
dark, right? But we've seen the whole I'm a dark character, therefore I'm evil. You know? And we've seen some of that. It doesn't happen as often as you think, but it does happen. Just to address another question, we do stream live on Twitch. We didn't mention that. We are on Twitch.
Yeah, if you follow us at Black Comics Chat on Twitter, you'll find more information on that.
Yeah, we're twitch.tv/Black Comics Chat.
Yep.
There was a continuation to that question about, especially since they oftentimes make villains wear black or non-human villains.
Yeah, I'm thinking about like Double Dragon. You know,
Double Dragon, Shadow.
That's a good example.
Yeah.
This it's very common. I think there is subtext in there, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
And, you know, we probably should dig into that even deeper. Like I'm thinking about, for some reason, the villain from Mighty Ducks comes up. You know, and I felt like there was a darker tone for that as well. You know, what we were surprised about, because I think originally we thought the majority of black actors played the villain, but we realized that they don't. Like it's a very even split depending on who the actor is. You know, like they'll both play villain and hero. So we didn't see that there was much of a disparity, but the visualizations are important.
Yeah, just a quick time. Oh, sorry. No, you go, Tony, but just 1 minute.
I know, we got 1 minute. Yeah. I will say, I think the last Street Fighter, for example, we saw Street Fighter yesterday, and we're always pointing out, like, if they're like they were fighting in a big ring in the audience, and they're basically like in India.
Right? They're in India, yeah.
Everybody in the audience is white, except for one dude who was like gray.
Yeah,
great.
And they have a bad habit of anglicizing Asian characters, like Ryu and Chun-Li. They render them in a very anglicized way.
So we're about to be done. Please follow us on Twitter at Black Comics Chat. You can follow me on Twitter at Latinegro, Leo.
At Leonardo EFF.
At Marcus Kwame.
And also Twitch, you can follow us at Black Comics Chat as well.
Yes. So thank you so much. I enjoyed it, and I think we might be done.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, y'all.
Right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Peace.
Do we
I'm
wait here?